Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm Tanya Granick-Allen. Many of you who are investors in crypto might be concerned about the future of your investments with the recent news and dramatic actions surrounding FTX and its fallout. FTX, which was a multi-billion-dollar crypto empire to the tune of $32 billion, went down in flames in what history will probably be seeing as one of the greatest debacles of all time. Could that fiasco have been avoided, you might ask yourself? Could and should the government regulate crypto in a greater capacity, if at all? Will crypto survive the FTX collapse? Well, joining me now is Bobby Del Rio, host of The Daily Drop here on the News Forum. Bobby, thank you so much for joining me in studio today. It's actually the first time we're meeting.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So
I think we DM'd on Twitter. I was like, oh, I love your show.
Yeah, yeah, you DM me. That's right. Okay, so some of our folks and our viewers who may be loyal Counterpoint viewers, they may not know that there's a new show on the News Forum. Tell us about what you do there.
Yeah, so the Daily Drop, it's like all things sort of crypto, blockchain, Web3, metaverse, NFTs, all that stuff. So I basically take like crypto language and convert it into sort of regular people language.
So that regular people like myself can understand. Like, I don't even know
Right.
what Web3 is, but it sounds wonderful, and we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into what's going on. Okay, so where can people watch your show? Is it on a specific day of the week, or?
I think it's Fridays at 6:30.
Okay.
That's when we first premiere.
Eastern time. Okay,
Yeah,
very good,
yeah.
very good. Okay, so we're going to talk about crypto and what happened with FTX. This has dominated headlines. Some people may not understand what's happening. It may impact them, and they still don't even understand. So we've got to really unpack this. So could you please, first of all, remind our viewers, what is crypto, and if you have some sense as to how many Canadians might be invested in it?
Yes. So, okay, crypto is basically like the new iteration of money. So now you can sort of, this is a bit of a debate. Is it a commodity? Is it a security? Because you can invest in it like stocks, but you can also pay for certain things at certain places with it, like money, right? So it kind of like, it's a bit of a debate what cryptocurrency actually is. But essentially, it's the new way that finance is going to run is through cryptocurrency. In terms of Canadians, I'm not exactly sure what the adoption rate is. Right now, globally, cryptocurrency is about 0.5% of the global financial assets market cap. Okay, so crypto right now is a market cap of approximately $800 billion. It was about $3 trillion at its peak. Now it's about $800 billion because it's been a tough year. But the global financial assets cap is over $200 trillion. So we're still just a blip on the radar.
And I think it's hard to probably find out or really investigate who owns what, because that's part of the attraction for crypto. There's a lot of anonymity with it.
You know, that's also a debate, right? Because most of crypto is like public, right? Because it's all on a blockchain. So blockchain can be tracked by anybody. Now, with that said, it's a bit of a myth because you can have private blockchains as well. To be honest, I think that we can get into that later, but I think part of the reason there's missing funds with FTX is that I think, it's just a conspiracy theory, I don't really know, but I think that he's just hidden some of that money. I think he's created protocols and just created private blockchains and hidden lots of money. He had the leverage and position to do it.
And of course, we're talking about Sam
Bankman-Fried.
Bankman-Fried, that's it, Sam Bankman-Fried. And he was the owner of FTX. So what was FTX? Or I assume it's still around. It's
yeah, so FTX was like almost like the Microsoft of crypto, right? So it was like the second or third biggest empire, right? So it was like an exchange, it was a bank, it was an investor. It was like the third biggest crypto business in the world, maybe second, depends how you want to define it.
Okay.
So they had a $32 billion valuation, as you were saying, and they basically collapsed almost in a day. It was really like there was a big CoinDesk article that started questioning the assets in the balance sheet of their sister company. So it's a bit complicated, but it was almost like a bit of a scam. There were sort of like two companies who were supposed to be independent, but were essentially working together. One was created by Sam, and then he left, and then he ran FTX, and then it was kind of like his ex-girlfriend or maybe current girlfriend was running Alameda. So they would kind of use the assets from one to create leverage in the other. And then there was a CoinDesk article that revealed that a great percentage of the assets on Alameda's balance sheet were FTT, which were like basically invented crypto from FTX. So there wasn't real money. So essentially, people found that out. There was a bank run, and then the house of cards collapsed because they had no money.
Okay, we're going to unpack this a little bit more in just a few moments. Stick around. Welcome back to Counterpoint. We're unpacking all things crypto, and especially as we look through the lens of the latest FTX debacle, a $32 billion crypto empire that has collapsed. And you might be wondering, well, where is my crypto, and is my crypto safe? Well, joining me again is Bobby Del Rio. He is host of The Daily Drop, which is a show here on the News Forum. Bobby, thanks again for joining me today. So you gave us a good overview of what happened, sort of the Coles Notes version, if you will, of what happened with FTX. But let's dial it back a bit. If someone wants to still, say, get involved in crypto, or maybe they're a current investor, how does one purchase or acquire crypto, rather?
Okay, so first thing I'll say is actually Canada, and I don't say that with any bias, right? Like just objectively, is one of the strongest places in the world to buy crypto because we're very, very regulated, our exchanges, especially here in Ontario. So when
you say it's regulated, what do you mean? If I'm buying a electronic currency, if you will, who's regulating that, and where is that jurisdiction if I physically live, say, in Toronto?
Sure.
Who regulates that?
So for Ontario, province of Ontario, of the OSC, the Ontario Securities Commission, and it's a very difficult process to get an exchange available to the public in Ontario, right? I'm pretty sure across Canada, but I'll just speak to Ontario because I know that better, right? This is the big problem with FTX, right? Because so they went to the Bahamas because they had way lighter restrictions than the U.S.
And better weather.
Much better weather. And so the thing about FTX is that the oversight is really in question right now, and the Bahamian standards are just not where they are for the rest of the world. And Canada is one of the leading bodies, I think, in the world in terms of regulation. So for me, I personally feel extremely safe investing in crypto here because there's oversight, there's reserves, there's insurance, there's all these things that an exchange has to have in Canada that you don't have to have in other countries.
So if you invest with an exchange based in Canada, if there is
you
one,
pretty much have to.
Then that is pretty much guaranteed to be more secure than, say, something maybe south of the border even?
Definitely. This is the biggest question mark in the United States right now because they want to expedite regulations in the United States because they don't really have set regulations. They have a little bit here and there, certain territories, but nothing comprehensive. So I would say in Canada, to be honest, we're maybe like, I don't know, 500% more regulated than the United States. It's look, as safe as anything is, it's probably the safest country in the world to invest in cryptos in Canada.
Wow. This kind of harks back to the 2008 financial crisis. I remember Canada, and at that time it was Minister of Finance Jim Flaherty, Prime Minister Stephen Harper was at the helm. I remember we just sort of sailed through that. We were one of the only G7 countries that really, through, I guess, our tight banking regulations, that we really just kind of coasted through that and were left pretty much unaffected.
Because we're very conservative financially in Canada, and that's benefiting us a great deal in the crypto world.
Okay, that's good to know. So then, how did FTX fail?
So this is really the challenge right now is figuring out what happened. So they've got a new CEO who's really just there to sort of unpack the bankruptcy. He's the same guy who did Enron's bankruptcy.
Oh, goodness.
And but he's the perfect person that you want, right?
Right.
So he basically just came out publicly and said it's the worst accounting and financial records and balance sheets and just corporate paperwork he's ever seen in his entire career. He's like multi-decade career.
Because for $32 billion in assets, one can't get a good accountant?
Well, this is it. They didn't even have a board.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because
it's by Bahamian standards.
I wouldn't even blame the Bahamas, but basically the Bahamas I think they kind of just let them do whatever they want. And I say that as I lived in the Bahamas for a few years, right?
Okay.
But I have nothing against the Bahamas, but just whatever they were doing, they clearly didn't look closely because it was essentially a bunch of 20-year-olds who were doing whatever they wanted. Apparently, they didn't even write down transactions. They may not have had a bank account. They implemented a system where they would auto-delete messages as soon as they were sent, right? It was almost like it was set up to be a con.
Oh my goodness. So was it a con? It's a big question. We only have 50 seconds left.
I mean, I think that it was a business run terribly that ended up creating a series of sort of moral compromises, similar to Theranos. I don't think
Yes.
Theranos was set out to be an official con, but I just think when you don't know what you're doing, you get desperate. Eventually, you start cutting corners.
Yeah, and eventually you run out of band-aids to put over for the wounds when you're trying to fix this. My goodness. Well, when we come back from commercial break, I do want to unpack a little bit more as to what kind of activities FTX was involved in, especially on the political lobbying side, because I love politics. So we're going to pick up this discussion in just a few moments. Stick around. Welcome back to Counterpoint. We are unpacking the FTX scandal, the debacle that led to a $32 billion company pretty much evaporating. And joining me now to have that discussion is Bobby Del Rio, who's host of the Daily Drop here on the News Forum. Bobby, thanks again for joining me in studio. It's always nice to have guests in studio. One thing that stood out for me as a political commentator observer is that Bankman-Fried, who was the CEO of FTX, he reportedly gave $40 million to support Democrats in the US election. And his colleague, Ryan Salame, gave $23 million to Republicans. There's suggestions that some of these massive donations could have influenced or could have been used to abate some of the desire in the US to regulate this sector, to peddle influence, basically. Does that carry any weight?
Oh, 100%. I mean, look, obviously we can't prove these things yet, but speculation right now is that essentially, because he's not in jail yet, right? In fact, like
he's in the Bahamas, I assume. Still?
We're not actually sure where he is. I think he is there, but apparently he's also speaking at some conference New York Times is putting on.
Wow.
Like it's like some of the things he's doing, I'm like, what is happening, right? But if you think about the amount of money that he spent lobbying politicians, there's a theory, and again, I have to say it's not proven, it's not substantiated. It does seem to make sense to me personally, but I don't really know how he lobbied all of these people, and there's a close family relationship between Gary Gensler, who's the SEC chairman,
oh wow,
and his ex, who was running Alameda, where like literally, I think that like Caroline is her name. Her father was like his mentor or something. Like it's
That's
like
a tight
it's some messy kind of thing. But you don't really know. I don't want to make accusations, but it's interesting, right? And then there's a theory that the amount of money he spent lobbying these politicians was specifically to slow down the adoption of cryptocurrency regulation, and then he was building the regulations as the chief lobbyist. So essentially, he would be benefiting. So it's almost like all of the regulations were being tailor-made to FTX.
Wow.
And that's what he spent his money on.
That's the allegation.
Yes.
Wow. That's definitely something that's going to have to be investigated. You always just follow the money, or in this case, follow the crypto. No, follow the money.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Well, it would make sense. I mean, again, you can't prove it necessarily, not yet. But why is the biggest market in the world being so slow for crypto adoption? Well, I mean, if you're paying politicians to delay it so then you can tailor it to your needs, it would make sense economically.
Yeah, if it looks like a duck and smells like a duck.
Right.
Now, again, following the money, they just have to follow probably which campaigns benefited from these donations. Could they follow? Is there a way to track these donations?
Yes, but the problem is that blockchains can be public and they can be private. And so, there's billions of dollars missing, right? So when they're doing, I don't know, the forensic accounting that they can do, but they can't find all of this crypto. Crypto equals money, right?
Right.
The problem is that this is money that you can turn into software and you can hide it. And you're not putting it in a bank account, right?
No.
You're putting it in an exchange. So there is a bit of a myth that you can just track the blockchains, but there's an issue with, there's a protocol called Tornado Cash, which has gotten in a lot of trouble because there is billions of dollars laundered through it, right? So essentially how a mixer works is you put a bunch of money in it and everything is tracked on a blockchain publicly.
Right.
You take all the money, you shake it up, you erase the blockchains, and then you redistribute the money to the people. So essentially, you're perfectly laundering money. Now, the debate is whether or not Tornado Cash did that on purpose or if it was incidental. But the reality is those types of protocols can be created. And I believe FTX may have created those protocols. He had the money, the leverage, the access to tech. And if he buried money in the sand digitally, you're never going to find it.
Wow. So we're going to have to basically determine intent here.
Yeah, it's hard though. How do you know?
Well, that's a good point. So there would be an innocent individual who invested and maybe used the exchange with FTX, and their money's just gone now?
There's like millions of them.
Billions.
Millions. I think there's like over 1 million creditors.
So will they see the money back?
I mean, maybe.
Is this the Madoff of crypto?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And Bernie Madoff went to jail for 150 years. So.
And that was small potatoes compared to this.
Well, actually, the numbers were actually significantly bigger with Madoff. But like Theranos was, I think it was 121 million to 324 million, something like that, depending on how you calculate it. And she went to jail for 11 years. And right now, with Sam Bankman-Fried, it's millions of dollars.
My goodness.
Sorry, billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars.
Yes.
Billions of dollars. Okay, we're going to continue this discussion right when we come back from this commercial break. Stick around. Welcome back. We're wrapping up our discussion on cryptocurrency and the FTX debacle and where things stand now and where they will be going from here. And again, joining me in studio is Bobby Del Rio, who is the host of a new program here on the news forum, The Daily Drop. Bobby, thanks again for joining me in studio. So we've looked kind of at what happened with FTX, or what we think happened, because again, things are still being investigated. But I'm glad you came on because it's been dominating headlines, and I at least, probably most of my viewers, but I at least wanted to make heads or tails of sort of what's happening. So there have been some thoughts, how do we go forward? What do we learn from this, and how do we better secure the exchange, or how do we protect investors who do invest in crypto? Some suggest that decentralization may be a solution. What is decentralization, and what are the pros and cons of that?
Okay, so decentralization is essentially, and it's not, again, I mean, decentralization is not limited to crypto, right? But essentially, you're removing intermediaries, right? So it's this idea that nobody's in charge and everybody's in charge. In a way, it's like communism, which is probably not something that you enjoy so much. But I will say, the cryptocurrency community is really divided into camps, right? So you have like Bitcoin only, right? The Bitcoin maximalists, and everything is just Bitcoin. Then you have this sort of decentralized aspect of the community. So that's also DeFi. It's really its own thing. That's really like computers are running everything, no people. And then you have centralized part of crypto, which is Sam Bankman-Fried, which is Coinbase, which is you get governments, banks. You get things that like essentially the way traditional finance operates. That's considered the centralized part of crypto. So I guess what people have to sort of contend with is, are you going to be more confident in, sort of automated computers kind of running everything, or like more of a traditional banking structure with oversight? There's pros and cons to both. I will say something that I just read very recently, actually, is that a disproportionate percentage of the hacks and thefts happened in DeFi, right? Which is the decentralized part.
Okay.
And I think it's because there's nobody paying attention. Now, with that said, you don't have, computers like stealing the money, but unfortunately, because the computers are just doing what they do, especially at the bridge point where essentially you're going from one type of crypto to another, you're seeing hackers exploit those vulnerabilities. So the reality is, even if you rely on the decentralized ethos for your money, there's still human beings that can find a way to intercept that dough.
My goodness. Okay, well, we'll have to, I guess, keep an eye on what method shakes out to be the best, or maybe there's a balanced approach, maybe both, and try your luck at both. And
I don't think it's going to be either or. I think it's going to be a compromise like anything else.
So how has FTX's implosion impacted some of the more traditional cryptos like Ethereum and Bitcoin? Those are seen kind of maybe more stable and safer?
Yeah, they haven't been affected that much. I mean, everything is down, at least, from a sort of investment perspective, maybe like 10%. Solana is a big loser in all of this, which is essentially another layer one, which is like a competitor to Ethereum.
Okay.
Mostly because FTX was a big investor in Solana, right? So there's big ties there. People have been freaked out. They've lost a lot. Like they were already down like 80, 90% from their all-time highs, and they've lost like another 80%. So they're down, I don't know, 97% from where they were just a couple years ago. But they're also one of the biggest communities in crypto. There's, so many. I think there's still like the number one crypto in terms of daily transactions, in terms of people building on it. So I think personally they're going to be fine long term, but they're definitely struggling right now.
My goodness. Okay. And will crypto as a whole survive the FTX collapse? Meaning, is this new engagement now tainted? Are people going to be gun shy to invest in this?
I think retail investors will be scared for a bit, but institutionally, you see more people buying. I think it's just like anything, right? It's like a bad play. Like, put it this way: like, did people stop investing in the stock market or mutual funds or hedge funds once Bernie Madoff's story came to light? No, right? But you just check people out more diligently, and I think that's what's going to happen.
That people become maybe more scrupulous going forward?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Bobby, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a true pleasure to unpack this all and have this layman discussion with someone who knows what they're talking about.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, that was a fascinating discussion. Will that change your mind if you become a crypto investor or not? I don't know, but we're going to stick around on this story because I think we're going to be uncovering a lot more in the future on what happened with FTX and how that might impact you if you're an investor. For Counterpoint, I'm Tanya Granick Allen.